Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 2, verse 4a. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void.
And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light.
And God divided the light from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. This was the first day.
On the second day, God created the sky and the atmosphere that surrounds the earth.
On the third, dry land and plants of all kinds.
On the fourth, God created two great lights, the sun and the moon, one to govern the day and one to govern the night.
On the fifth day, God created the birds and winged creatures of the air, and of the sea, fish and other creatures.
On the sixth day, God made the animals of the earth. And God said, "I will create humankind in my image." God blessed them all and said, "Be fruitful and multiply." And God saw everything God had created, and it was very good.
On the seventh day, God rested.
God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it.
This is the story of creation.
Back in ancient times, God became quite unhappy with humanity, and he decided he needed a reboot. So he told Noah, "I am going to send rains 40 days and 40 nights and flood the earth, and I need you to build an ark, a massive boat for you and your partner and your children and their partners and all the live beings from the earth, the sky, and the sea. 2 by 2, load them on that ark because the rains are going to come." Come here. Yes, good boy. Up, in, up. Come here. Up. Yes.
Come on,
yes.
hop up. Come on.
In the boat. In the boat. Can
Come on,
you imagine
Hop
some
up.
of the trouble Noah had getting the animals in that ark? Good boy. Up. Yes. Good boy. Yes. Yay. Success. So then they were in this ark for months. Can you imagine the loneliness, the feeling distant and cut off from all of humanity except for our own families? Sound familiar? So after months of riding in this ark for months and months, Noah sent out a dove to see if it could detect land, and it came back with a branch. Such hope. Land was emerging from the floods. And then it was time to begin anew on the land. And God told Noah, "I make a covenant to be with you and all of your future descendants for eternity, to support you, to be with you, to love you. I will never send floods like this again. And as a reminder of my covenant and my oath to you, whenever we see a rainbow coming from the clouds, that will be our reminder of my love for you."
After the Israelites escaped slavery and were wandering in the wilderness, Pharaoh changed his mind.
What was I thinking? I want those Israelite slaves back.
So Pharaoh got in his chariot and took his army with him. They caught up with the Israelites by the Red Sea.
I will get those Israelites and make them slaves again.
The Israelites were very afraid. They cried out to Moses,
"Why did you bring us here?"
It would have been better to remain slaves in Egypt than to die in the wilderness.
But Moses answered them,
Don't be afraid, God will save you.
Then Moses picked up his staff and stretched out his hand over the sea. When he did that, God drove the sea back by a strong east wind and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. The Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Thus God saved Israel that day from the Egyptians.
Yay!
Then the prophet Miriam took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, "Sing to God, for she has triumphed gloriously."
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Hey. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Come on.
Ezekiel 37, the dry bones. The hand of the Lord grabbed me and set me down in the middle of an open place, and it was full of bones. God led me about the place, and there were bones everywhere, and they were very dry.
How dry were they?
Very dry. God said, Ezekiel, can these bones live?
Only you know, God.
God said, prophesy to these bones and say, dry bones, listen to the word of God. I will breathe into you and give you life. I will attach sinews to you and muscles and cover you with skin. When I breathe life into you, then you will know that I am God. I prophesied as God commanded. As I prophesied, there was the sound of rattling. The bones came together, bone on bone. Then sinews formed to knit the bones together, and muscles, then skin stretched over them, but they had no breath in them. God said, prophesy to the breath, tell the breath, come from the four winds, come breath, breathe on these slain bodies that they may live. And so I prophesied as God commanded. The breath entered them, and they came alive. They stood on their feet, a large multitude. Then God said, Ezekiel, these bones are the house of Israel. Listen to what they are saying. Our bones are dried up. Our hope is gone. There is nothing left for us. Therefore, prophesy. Tell them, God says, I will dig up your graves and bring you out alive, O my people. I will bring you back to the land of Israel, and I will put my spirit within you, and you shall live. Then you shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken and will act. The end.
The Fiery Furnace, a story from the book of Daniel. Long, long ago, in a kingdom far, far away, we'll call this kingdom Babylon, and very prideful king ruled over the land. We'll call him King Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, like many of the powerful, surrounded himself with only beautiful things: castles, artwork, temples, gardens, tropical sandy beaches. And he also surrounded himself with whisperers who would whisper in his ear only good news. They told him only what he wanted to hear. They told him that his reign over Babylon was golden and perfect, and that Nebuchadnezzar himself was like unto a god. So the king, in his pride, gathered all the scribes together to declare that an image of gold should be made of him, and it would be huge, and it would be golden and perfect, so that all the people could see his golden perfection even from afar. And you may be asking yourself, how big is huge? Some of the scribes posed this question to our king, and he said that he would not answer, and that any scribe who asked him this question again would be thrown into a fiery furnace to be burned to death, which discouraged further questioning. Later, some counselors put out written reports and announcements that it would be 60 cubits high, 6 cubits wide. No one was sure what a cubit was, and given that no one wanted to be thrown into a fiery furnace, it was never asked, so we don't know. When the statue was finished, King Nebuchadnezzar gathered all the whisperers together and all his government officials and declared that he would have a golden band, a perfect band, play. Again, some brave scribes asked, what is a perfect band? The king, ready with his answer this time, said it would have horns, pipes, lyre, trigon, harp, and bagpipe, and play every kind of music. This didn't sound very practical to the scribes, but again, under the fiery furnace edict, they felt they wouldn't push it. He further declared that when you hear the sound of the perfect band playing the perfect sound, all should bow down and worship before the perfect golden image of Nebuchadnezzar. But the whisperers still whispered. They said, but what about those who do not acknowledge Babylon as number one and do not bow down to the perfect golden image? Nebuchadnezzar, in his pride, fell back on his usual threat, and as the book of Daniel tells us, whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, they fell down and worshipped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, not all the whisperers were satisfied with their place, and to get even closer to the king, they whispered that there were certain foreigners who say that you were less than perfect. Did you not declare that such should be thrown into the fiery furnace? And they called out 3 people in particular. For anonymity's sake, we'll call them Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they said of them that you have appointed these men in higher places than us, your faithful whisperers. And these men, O king, they do not worship the golden image that you have set up. So King Nebuchadnezzar was not a fool, but he realized that he had been backed into a corner. But as is his wont, he didn't back down, he doubled down. So he brought Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into his court, and he confronted them and he said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abed, are you traitors? Are you spreading false lies about me? Are you not worshiping the golden image? I have a loyalty test. I'm going to strike up the band, and I am assured that I have full faith in you that you will be bowing down to worship, because otherwise I'll have to throw you into the fiery furnace. And the three men, they answered back and they said to the king, we're not going to do it. Our God will save us. And if he chooses not to, we're still not going to go bow down before the golden image. Nebuchadnezzar was really filled with fury by this answer. He ordered the furnace heated up extra specially hot. He had 3 soldiers bind them, bring them to the furnace. The furnace was so hot and the flames broke through the door, burning up the 3 soldiers, who dropped the bodies of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace, and they were killed, those soldiers. And that would be the end of our story. Except King Nebuchadnezzar saw something that amazed him. He looked, there were not 3 men. He turned to his advisors, his whisperers, and said, I'm a smart man, I'm a genius, I can count. But on my 4 little fingers, I count 4 men, not 3. And they are unhurt. They are walking around. The 4th one looks like an angel. So at this point, a miracle happened. For what the king saw made him believe, and some say, even a change of heart. So he ran up, he shouted in there, hey, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out. And they did. Not a hair on their beard, unsinged. And Nebuchadnezzar declared, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command, yielded up their very bodies to a fiery furnace rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. And while some say Nebuchadnezzar was a changed man, he was still used to the ways of power, and he added it to his decree. Any people of any nation or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue this way. And the scribes distributed his decree throughout the land, as scribes do when they want to avoid limb tearing.
Jonah saying, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, for the great wickedness has come up before me.
Good to know you got my back, partner.
But Jonah set out to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He found a ship going there, so he paid his fare, went aboard, away from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and a mighty storm came upon the sea that threatened to break the ship up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried to their God. They threw the cargo that was on the ship into the sea to lighten it for them.
Getting sleepy now.
Jonah, meanwhile, had gone down into the hold of the ship and had laid down and was fast asleep. The captain came and said, "Say your minds.
What are you doing sound asleep? Get up! Call on your God! Prepare it!"
The sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots, so that we may know on whose account this calamity has come upon us." So they cast lots, and the lots fell on Jonah.
Tell us why this calamity has come upon us. What's your occupation? Where do you come from? What's your country? And of what people are you?
I am Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land.
What shall we do to you so that the sea may quiet down for us? For the sea is growing more and more tempestuous.
If there's one thing I can do, it's get toys to kids. Yeah, well, things don't always work out the way you think they will.
Pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For it is this great storm has come upon you.
So they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea. And the sea ceased its raging. Then the men feared him even more. But the Lord provided a large fish to swallow up Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights.